Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Culture Clash podcast, where Russian and American discuss and debate some of the hot topics in the news from previous weeks. I'm Michael.
I'm Vlad. Hello, everyone.
Today we have a very special guest, an old friend of Vlad's and somebody who's working in economics and finance here in Dubai. His name is Dima, so we're looking forward to that. So welcome, Dima.
Very nice to meet you.
So Dima, given your expertise, given your experience, what would be your assessment of the state of the world economy? I've spoken, and Vlad and I have spoken on this podcast many times. I'm scared to death. He thinks everything's going to be fine and everything's going to be fantastic. What's your perspective? Should we be concerned or high level? Yeah, what do you think?
Okay, so I'm going to disappoint you first. I'm more on the Vlad side here.
Yeah.
I'm relatively optimistic. There are always concerns that we should be aware of. Especially now, very, very active couple of years behind. Even starting from COVID, I would say it was like walking along the mines all of the time. So there are very serious concerns at the moment. I would love to focus more on growth concerns, because this is what is the most important. Whenever there is growth, things are prospering, that kind of stuff. The biggest concern now are demography in many parts of the world, especially in developed countries. And there is a problem with China, which is quite evident.
What is that problem?
Basically, if you look at the world GDP growth, I believe like starting from 2000, around that time, China was contributing a lot to the growth. So we know that China has grown dramatically. It was like sometimes 10% per year, sometimes 7%. Now it's going lower and lower and lower. At some time, I believe like 2008 or after the global financial crisis, China was contributing 50% of global GDP growth. 50%.
That's insane.
So if China is ill, in general, it doesn't mean that the whole world collapses, but the growth is problematic.
So if China sneezes, the world catches a cold.
It's more of a saying for US, for sure, because it's so much more important at the moment, still. But China is, it's very close in importance as well.
What about India? I think India has even kind of outgrown China in terms of the pace.
Yeah. India, well, first of all, India overcame in terms of population very recently.
Yeah,
so it's number one now. And economy is growing really, really fast. It's one of the most outrageously valued public stock markets in the world.
The Indian stock market?
Yes. Because
as in overvalued?
It's not like overvalued, but if you have a look at the valuations, at the multiples where stocks are traded, like standard ones, like market cap to EBITDA, or market cap to revenue.
How does it rank?
It's like one of the top markets.
Wow.
Because they have intrinsic growth due to demographics.
Right.
And demographics always have like very gradual event. Basically, whenever country starts growing, it doesn't affect the economy too much at the beginning. But the most important part about demographics is when people are becoming of working age. Mm-hmm. So it's a question of how many people are coming out of this base due to being old or dying or whatever, and how many people are added to this amount. So this is a very important thing that we should think about. For example, Russia is very interesting because even though population is kind of more or less stable, at the same time, the working age population is in huge decline.
Yeah, the working population shrinks.
That's why there is like huge headwind for economy naturally. Because demographics is really important for any economy. Because
it's destiny, isn't it? Demographics is destiny, they say.
Yeah, I never heard about this, but it's definitely very important.
Mm. So then that's interesting. So then from a world economy point of view, you said you're not concerned, but we have issues with China, one of them being demographics, right? Mm-hmm. So the Chinese demography is in some ways collapsing, right? By the end of the century, they're looking at...
It's early to say that it is collapsing. They have moderated their policy, and now they are in a slight decline, which may reverse in no time. You never know, but there is a concern that since the growth is not there, the only another source of economic growth is productivity growth. Is how much this people that you have in the economy, how much each of them can produce on average.
Technology would obviously play a role in that.
Yeah, capital, technology, how well, there is like a famous example that you can take like 10 diggers with a shovel or one tractor, for example, but it's also important how do you use this tractor? Is it utilized 100% or 50%? How effective it's doing its job, etc., etc. So there are lots of components to that. Obviously, there are a lot of good news for the global economy, like development of AI, generally speaking, widespread use of technology. In some places in the world, it's still like, for us here, it would feel like in a Stone Age. For example, like in some places in Africa, they are just starting to use payment links and that kind
electronic
of stuff.
Payments, all
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's why even like 5 to 10 years ago, Visa and MasterCard were growing tremendously because they were still tapping in billions and billions of people who were not using the credit or debit card at all. So we are very privileged here to live in a nice location, which is Dubai. But world is very...
Besides the weather, besides everything else, it's also the technology, right?
But world is very diverse. And when speaking about global economy, we should think about all parts at the same time. But there are definitely concerns that you tackled in one of your last podcasts. They are all true. But if you go back in time, at any point of time, you would be concerned.
Me specifically, or people in general?
Like people generally.
Yeah.
You specifically.
Maybe me more than most.
Yeah, of course. You'll be
the pessimistic, amongst us. Yeah. But then, question for you, Dima, because this is very interesting, and we had this chat the other day for a very long time. Do you not worry a bit about the debt levels, about commodity markets, about global trade? I mean, because from my vantage point, again, you're an actually trained economist, so you're going to know this stuff way better than I would. But from a sort of a layman's point of view, I see global debt, growing massively, particularly American debt. Global trade seems to be, moving into reverse in terms of more protectionism rather than free trade. Are these things not concerns for global economic growth? Can they not hamper, the future potential? And do you not worry about those things? Or what should we make of those developments?
Mm-hmm. Let's start from debt. It's a very fascinating topic, in fact. Many people are generally concerned about debt, especially government debt. But what you have to keep in mind is that somebody's debt is somebody's asset. All of these people that are...
It's a Ray Dalio quote.
Maybe. I don't even know, but yeah, I know Ray Dalio, but that's very important to understand, realize, because then it's starting to look like not that big of a concern, because we are not, as a global population, we do not own this money to some kind of aliens, yeah, or to somebody else or some enemies. It's you have to think about that in the same way you think about money. The problem with that comes when there is no balance. Basically, the biggest concern out there is about government finances now. Because when government is spending persistently and a lot more than it's getting from its taxpayers, which is like the main source of budget income, then it becomes questionable how, in the long term, this government can survive and serve its obligations. In the end, you either default or you have to cut your costs, which is like what U.S. government is actively trying to do. Doge, yes, this kind of initiatives, which are, in my opinion, completely correct. I mean, the direction is right for sure. You can question only the methods and how legal it is, etc. But generally
and
speaking,
not to upset any American liberals or anything, you're Russian. You're not on either side of things. You're saying just economically it makes sense what Doge is trying to do.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. I mean, there is another way. You can tax the hell out of your citizens or corporations, and you're welcome to do it. But I doubt that it is better than trying to optimize your government. I mean, I am from Russia. We do not have an effective government, and look, guys, where we are at the moment, where any kind of not effective enough country now lives in, and I don't wish America go through things like this. That's it. So you have to focus on your government. It's your government represents you. If government is not effective in finances, you are not either.
No,
I think we have some examples like Singapore or Switzerland or even here in the UAE, which are one of the most efficient governments in the world. And we know that Singapore is one of the most developed countries in the world. UAE is going there as well. Then Switzerland is one of the happiest or even the happiest nation on earth.
something like that.
At least like they're in top 5. So I think there are some correlations over here. And on the contrary, I think a lot of European governments, they're falling out of this efficiency index. I think in one of our episodes we discussed this, where that the United Kingdom, it used to be like number 6 or number 5 in terms of government efficiency, and now it's below 15, something like that. And I think we also can see that even like from
Our British friends would say the same thing, that it's just a mess, the UK government and the state of things. Yeah, absolutely.
Right. Yeah.
But then this brings me to another question. So I think that's interesting. So you're essentially agreeing that the government debt's a problem, that the only solutions will either be a default, which would be a chaotic event for any government, but particularly if it was something like the US government. But then if the other solution is massive cuts, does that not also threaten the economy from the perspective of, if we're going to be cutting spending massively, that's obviously going to impact economic growth. So is that maybe not a major concern at that point?
It depends on what you cut in the end. If you are, again, we are talking about effectivity. If you are spending X on something productive, then spending 2X on something really unproductive, like throwing the money away, I mean, it's helping economy in some way, because money, like in physics, energy does not disappear. The same thing, almost the same thing works about money, because in the end, even if you are throwing the money away, buying like Lamborghinis or stuff,
somebody's getting it.
Yeah, somebody is getting it. So government spending definitely helps, but all studies show that if you exchange government spending for corporate investments, for example, it would be more effective for economy, especially in the long term. Because government is very tactical. It's not caring too much. It's not for profit. Mm-hmm. Corporation, when it invests money, it's very particular about where to invest, how to control it, etc., etc. Government is sort of lazy investor.
Just throws money at things and
is sometimes it just pours money on fire just to
for political purposes.
Sometimes.
Yeah, because they do have some ideology, or they need to care about something that will be completely unprofitable for corporations. That's why they need to support something as a government. That's why I believe they care about profit less.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I mean, the U.S. government is famous for that, just throwing money at different issues, and again, those issues usually don't get solved. That's interesting.
Can I also add something about that? Most people are scared about, especially U.S. government debt or any other like UK government debt, because of its size. And for any of us like mortal people, it sounds just ridiculous.
What's the U.S. at now? 37 trillion, something like that?
It's
just an unbelievable
it's
number.
huge.
Let's
for sure.
put it here.
Yeah. But most importantly, we have to first think about it as a share of U.S. Economy. It's really important because sometimes when you have like $1 million in debt, but your income is $2 million, then you're completely fine. Yeah. But at the same time, GDP is not like an income of a government, so you have to keep that in mind. But don't be scared about the amount of debt, because to be frank, just consider yourself. When you as a person and you are economic agent, like the government or like a corporation, when you take a mortgage, you take debt in the amount which is huge for you.
Yeah, correct.
It's multiples of your annual incomes. And nobody feels pressure about that. It's completely fine. So the problem comes when at the same time you have the mortgage, you also have other spending besides the mortgage payments that are, exceeding your incomes or quickly growing, which that is a problem.
And then you need to take on more debt just to pay off the old debt.
Sort of, yeah. And that can be spiraling thing. Nobody would invest in you infinitely or quasi-infinitely, like people trust U.S. government or any
for some reason.
Very good reason, for a very good reason, because it's like hundreds of years of prosperity.
Yeah.
It's a future of multi-million population country, so that's a lot.
And at the end of the day, right, we are the most stable system, even if the other systems are
exactly. Yeah, that's important topic by itself. That there are no clear opportunity to invest or to look at any other country besides USA at the moment as a global financial center. So
it's still, from your perspective, is the global financial center, will remain the global financial center.
By far.
That's a great topic. So I think, what do you think then about all these, speculations that the dollar will be replaced as the main currency, that the US is not the, that financial stable center anymore? We need to look at the China more. We need to look at the, anywhere else, BRICS as an example. So is it real? Does it have any real value, all these speculations, or this is just the words? What do you think?
I think you have to realize that it will happen someday, that US will be not number one.
You kidding me? You really believe that? You think somebody can take out the US, really?
Usually empires take themselves.
That's true.
Out. So there is no need for any other actor to do badly to United States. United States took out the United Kingdom.
That's true.
And there were no direct confrontation except for the famous Independence War, but it was far before the eventual kind of change of leadership around the
maybe
globe.
Another 150 years.
150 years,
that.
I was.
And to be honest, there is an argument that U.S. finally overtook the British Empire, early 19th century, when U.S. was an ally for the Britain.
Absolutely. I mean, World War II is a great example of everything that happened after that. I know part of the Lend-Lease that the Americans gave to Winston Churchill was, we need to take all of your North American possessions, and in exchange, we're going to give you our old ships and some loans and things like that. So the Americans did take advantage, definitely, of the British, even while we were allies. Yeah, that is a good point.
But, the most important thing about this topic is the time horizon we are talking about.
Right.
There were great empires that completely collapsed in the past.
Like your guys' great empire, right? The Soviet Empire?
Byzantium Empire and Roman Empire. Let's talk about that.
Oh, you don't want to talk about the Soviet one. Okay, fair enough.
We love to talk about it, but it's a big topic. Actually, it's good that it eventually collapsed,
Oh, that's a whole different topic.
There is an argument for that.
Which one? Sure. Roman, Byzantium, USSR, or British?
All of them, because in paradise because its model is kind of outdated, which is good. Like whenever there is a competition, and in economics is a very big topic about competition, that it's really healthy and helpful for any kind of growth or prosperity. You can see it in nature. Competition is one of the main driving forces of
the mother
evolution.
of innovation. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Interesting.
True.
But then, okay, so yeah, I mean, we're covering a lot of interesting points here. Going back very quickly to the debt before I want to change topics a bit, unless you have anything else you want to add or ask. But so, do you not find then that now the U.S. is paying because of interest rates being higher? What are we on now? I think $1 trillion of interest payments. We've got a defense budget of $900 billion. So you're not that concerned about this, right? Is that because you think interest rates will come down? You think there's a market for U.S. debt? What's your assessment on that individual risk being the debt? And then again, maybe if you could speak briefly to tariffs, and yeah, just basically if you're saying all of these concerns are overblown, and if so, why? Or yeah, if you could just, yeah, what's your thought on that?
So on going back on that, I think this is no joke, for sure. The good thing is that US have some time. It's not a disaster at the moment.
How much time do we have, you think?
That's it's a really hard topic to talk about timing all the time. But I think if you do nothing, then you have less than 20 years, seriously.
If you take no action and follow the same...
no action, just follow the same path, then in, let's say, 20 years, I see the scenario where another player emerges. Like the most obvious now is China. Many countries like Russia already actively starting yuan as a reserve currency. I know the citizens of our country who now know yuan to ruble exchange rate, which I have no
really?
idea.
Like they use it as a...
Yes.
Oh my God, really?
Yeah. It's
the first time I hear it.
There is an interesting fact. I just recently rewatched some old economic news from Russia from back of 2007, something like that.
Oh, that time.
And I just noticed that every time any kind of news topic ended, there were 15 seconds, which was spent on explaining what is the currency rate of ruble compared to US dollar and to euro. Every day, hundreds of times on on TV.
Yeah.
It's a big topic because I think it's rooting from 1990s where US dollar was kind of the only hard currency for Russians, but it still persisted for a very long time, and now it's not completely changed by yuan, but in a very heavy manner for sure.
So at least now you have yuan as well. So it's not like I remember since childhood, every time you turn on the news, the news block will end up with today's US dollar rate to Russian ruble is 31 ruble per $1, and euro is 34, something like that. And we used to hear it all the time, and nothing else. It was only USD and euro. That's it. Now,
the yuan. That's interesting also, because I was reading something or watching some video that to that point, a lot of Russian citizens are now placing their savings in yuan, either owning the hard currency or owning Chinese bonds or something like that. So that's really interesting. And maybe Russia's sort of a prime example of a potential harbinger, potential threat to U.S. financial dominance. I think that's a very interesting...
Russia is a potential threat to U.S. financial dominance?
No, that it's a harbinger of what the future...
Okay.
I mean, look, you guys, when you were the Soviets, when you were the commies, you guys were intimidating. I don't know if modern Russia is as scary for us, but...
economically, no.
Yeah, even militarily. Anyways, that's a whole other conversation for another time. But... yeah, that's very interesting. And that's probably the first country that I've heard has chosen an alternative to the US dollar. And interestingly, America did it to itself, right? With the sanctions, we cut ourselves off from the Russian market in an attempt to punish you guys. So that goes to a whole different discussion on the efficacy of sanctions. Should we be doing them? Is it in America's best interest? And we had this conversation for like 4 hours the other day. And yeah, look, I mean, personally, I think it's a bad idea. I don't like to see that we're abusing this power that at the end of the day could come back and bite you, badly. But then if you could draw out that scenario for us, Dima, because that's really interesting. You said 20 years. What happens at that mark if and when this ticking time bomb of debt goes off? What happens? What are the implications? What are the series of events, if you could, try to draw that out for us?
So basically, what would happen if the U.S. government will not be able to pay?
Yeah, so pretty much if we don't do anything about this issue, what is it going to look like and what's going to happen? Because I think that's where people, particularly today in American politics, we're, not me because I'm a MAGA guy, I think, as you guys know, but, a lot of us Americans are complaining about what Musk is trying to do with Doge, is complaining about what, the Republicans seem to be trying to do, which is to cut spending. I don't know how serious they are yet, but there's a lot of pushback to that. So if you could try to draw out and, humanize for us just what will happen at the end of that process, because maybe that's what people need, is to know, this is going to be really bad if we don't address this issue. Yeah, what does that look like from your perspective?
It's definitely going to be a very gradual process, but there is some kind of tipping point, and that's why I marked like 20 years, because it's a timeline that matters to all of us here, like sitting here and listening to. I honestly believe and hope that US will do most of the things they can do to avoid this scenario. But in this scenario, one of the most important things that would happen is, first of all, US dollar will be outpaced by some other currency, let's say yuan, for the sake of the argument, as a reserve currency, which is critical for global dominance, especially in like economics and finance. It's very important. Secondly, which would be harder to do for any kind of growing economy, it's where global talent is moving. Whether this or that country or collection of countries, you can argue that EU at some point may be an interesting place. Whether the region attracts talent, global talent, I think that is very important, because you never have to underestimate the power of people. We are now in a completely different situation, because US and Europe mostly attract most bright people around the world. And even though in China they have like millions of PhDs, for sure I have, very smart people, but what makes Western societies at the moment most prosperous is not just the amount of people and their quality, but the mix. Because US, for example, attracts people from all around the globe.
You were an example of that.
Sort of. And ideas exchange. Basically, in some countries, you can argue, Vlad can argue that Moscow is one of the greatest cities in the world.
That's
in
true.
Some parts, you are, go ahead and argue with that.
Look, if you're a single guy, I think everybody would agree with that, but that's a whole different topic.
Yeah. So it's always good to collect people from different worlds in one room and let them work together, which US universities is like prime example of, basically. So whenever this model would be transferred to any other place, then there is a huge concern for the dominance of one country. It will never be like on some day it will happen. Things are growing slowly and dying slowly. So, but you can mark this tipping point only looking back. Mm-hmm. Never like, oh, today is the day, for sure. It's just it's just rough estimate. Yeah. When it's gonna happen.
What does this look like? Like when the government cannot pay this government debt, what does it look like? Like what? Because if I cannot pay my debt on my credit card, I know what would happen. I will face like the fines. I will face some issues. I will face some guys who tell me like, you're gonna pay us. Who will come for government?
Very important question and very, very good one at this moment of our conversation. Because when government is out of money, basically, then inflation happens. Because the only advantage of any government is that it has a power to print money, essentially. So there is no other way but to print money, which leads to inflation, and which in the end leads to less interest in this particular currency by other global players. So the currency is gradually outpaced by some other reserve currency. And the biggest topic, like the biggest talking point about US currency was always its stability. The inflation is sort of controlled in the long term by Federal Reserve. They are trying to keep it at 2% per annum. Now it's a little bit higher. But the argument is that it was because of COVID. US government had to dramatically increase support of US citizens, etc., which led to huge growth in monetary base, which with some time delay leads to inflation. So I would not mark the inflation that was destroying US citizen in the last 2-3 years as a indication of this process of big exchange of dominance in the world. I would rather say there is a more story about COVID complication.
This isn't the tipping point, you're saying?
No.
Yeah. And that's interesting. So I think to that point, Vlad, so does that then look like, because I think you just started to lay out how drastic the change would be. Right now, commodities are priced in dollars, for example, right? So that means oil prices go up. If you move away from being the reserve currency, that means commodity prices, gold prices, everything would then go up. Does then the same scenario hold that, okay, as there's less interest in the currency depreciates, interest rates have to rise to accommodate the need for capital. So now governments have to raise interest rates to control inflation, similar to what's happening right now in Russia, which then stifles the economy, limits economic growth. So overall, it's a terrible scenario, right? It's a perfect storm sort of situation.
Yeah, it is.
Standard of living comes down. All of that is how that goes, yeah?
Yeah, look at any recession basically in the US. US monetary policy played a huge role in general well-being of American citizens and of the world itself. Back in 19th and 20th century, there were no good theory about how to do this. Now it's a very clear and transparent way of how central bank is doing things. Basically, if there is a recession, then it's helpful for interest rates to go down because investments are supported. Regular citizens can take debt. Corporations can also take some loans and make investments. That all helps economic activity. On the contrary, when there is overheating, and the after COVID scenario is a prime example of this sort of overheating, because the prices were going up just because there were too much money in the pockets. I don't remember the exact statistics, but I believe that it was the highest amount of free cash ever.
For being a living and breathing American who doesn't even live in the U.S., they gave me $5,000.
Really?
The government gave me checks, mailed those checks to Dubai, $5,000.
No way.
Yeah. Look, I thought it was criminal. I felt like I was stealing from my own government.
Was it a one-time payment or regular payment?
It was 3 or 4 payments.
Three or four payments with $5,000.
Yeah. So
being
Trump,
in Dubai.
Yeah. It was all American citizens. Trump did 2 or 3, I think. Biden did another 1 or 2. But yeah, look, I think to that point,
So these were these famous helicopter money.
yeah, this was the helicopter money. So this is a good point that you talk about spending and using your money wisely. This was literally just throwing money at people. And then are you surprised when inflation gets out of control, when the stock market and crypto goes wild? Yeah, it's bad policy making.
It was necessary. Many people will tell you.
I don't know if it's necessary for me to get the $5,000.
Yeah. But again, we are going back to the topic of government efficiency. It cannot. There is no resources to understand in such scenario when everything collapses, when the world stops because of global pandemic. There is no time. There is no resources to understand. Mike is living in Dubai. He's doing fine. He doesn't need 5,000. So. It's better to throw money on the fire. Whatever sticks is fine. That's why it's not. It's good that they do it. For example, in Russia, nobody received anything, like nothing, zero.
I'm happy I got the $5,000. I'm not complaining about that. I have no intention to pay it back, by the way. But it just felt wasteful. It felt like a complete. Maybe to your point, you needed to do something. And look, this goes into a much deeper and wider COVID conversation, which from my perspective, we never had to lock down to begin with. But that's a whole different topic. None of us are medical experts. And, I don't think there's much efficacy in talking about that. But yeah, interesting. Vlad, anything you wanted to?
Go ahead.
Okay.
Have next.
So now with that in mind, we've talked about global economy. We've talked about the risks to the U.S., government efficiency in the U.S., all that. What's your view on the U.S. stock market? So obviously you're a fund manager and, you have a lot of experience in investing, where to put money and all that. What's your take on the U.S. stock market, where you think it's going? What's your outlook? Do these Trump tariffs impact anything? Mm-hmm. What's your high-level expert assessment?
Mm-hmm. Let's tackle the tariff story first, because we are kind of... just not to jump between economy and finances, which is like really important stuff to differentiate between, because economy is like how things are going in general in the country, and the market is more like specific thing. It's a very small part of general economy, but still very important. So tariffs are universally bad thing for everybody. That's just fact. It's a very simple fact that is learned at the first year of economic studies.
Macroeconomics 101.
Yeah. So
exactly.
You have to consider tariffs to be not an economic policy, but rather politics.
100%.
So what is happening now? Generally speaking, market is not happy about tariffs, and you can see a lot of news topics about market is going down because of the tariffs. I would argue that it's not about that. Tariffs are more like a light on some gas that helped to do it. But generally speaking, when you talk to any sort of investment professionals, they generally believe that tariffs would not stick for the long term. It's just a political play. They will go back and renegotiate more favorable terms. In the end, we may be living with a little bit more strict tariffs that compared to what has been before, but not drastically, because in the end, it's not profitable to anyone.
Can I push? I'm going to push. Okay, well, not push back, because again, you're the economist.
No, go ahead. Push back. It's culture clash.
Yeah, it is culture clash, but I'm going to push back with my unexpert opinion. And again, I am a MAGA guy, so make with that what it is. But slight pushback on the tariff point. So I was doing I was looking at some of the data earlier today, and
are you gonna say they're stealing our jobs?
They're stealing our jobs. All the immigrants, we got to kick them out. That's my Trump impression. So we can do more, Trump impression as time goes on. But what I was reading is that as I get into the data, I want you to explain to me as an economist, what should the U.S. or what could the U.S. be doing outside of just tariffs? So we now have a working class where the blue collar folks in America live 8 years shorter than white collar folks. Back in 2000, that differential was 1 year. So life expectancy is plummeting for the blue collar folks, for the manufacturing, everyday American. You've seen 5 million fewer manufacturing jobs in America over the last 25 years. The top 1% in America now make more money than the middle 60%. The top 1% has greater wealth than the middle 60% in the US. Top 1% in the 1970s had 30 times more wealth than the middle class. Now that's 72 times. So, for example, some other data points. Healthcare costs just in the last 25 years since the year 2000 have gone up 3 times. Median income is only up 40%. Median home values are up 2.6 times. A new car costs 2 times more money. Tuition for university is up 2.6 times. Debt versus GDP has also doubled. So on every metric, life has gotten more expensive. There's fewer manufacturing jobs. The middle class is getting absolutely screwed. And then debt to GDP is getting out of control. And yet life is getting worse for most Americans. So can tariffs not help to alleviate some of that in the short term by forcing some of these jobs back, which at the end of the day gives a livelihood to these people, even if you've got an inflation problem at that point, even if there's other consequences. But how can this situation continue and go on without some kind of intervention from the government?
Mm-hmm. Very long question. Thank you.
I know. Sorry. Yeah, I threw a lot of data at you.
Yeah, we can argue about data. There are some nuances about that. But generally speaking, for the most points that you mentioned, increasing tariffs in the long term would just exacerbate most of these problems. Because there is a blue collar America problem. High tariffs, they are designed to hit this population the most, because white collars have savings, that sort of stuff. Whenever there is a small increase in inflation, people who are hurt the most are people who are living from paycheck to paycheck, unfortunately. People who have enough wealth, they can invest most of their wealth in instruments that are sort of inflation protected, which is not affordable for below average people. So tariffs are in some ways designed to tax the poorest and take this money, a little bit of that money, to the government, because in the end it's the government that makes money from that. Okay, you can argue that it might help to bring some industries back to the US soil, but you will see some positives, but you will see far more negatives on average. So it's more about wealth redistribution. So you just take the same pie, you cut a small piece of it because of the tariffs, like nature, and then you recut it in a slightly different manner. So on average, it would be a loss. And then you can argue that some, car manufacturers would be better, these guys would be worse, etc., etc. If we're talking averages, it's unfortunately worse for the world. If tariffs were good, then we would have a world where everything is 100% tariffed, and there is no global trade at all. Now, you can argue for development. There is only one strong argument about tariffs being helpful policy, is to kickstart some industry. For example, there is a quickly developing country that is trying to start, for example, semiconductors production on its soil. If there are no tariffs at all, it's really hard. It's a high capex industry. So there is an argument that you can play around that policy to help your local producers, to help them kind of
get started.
Yeah, get started and catch the technology, even though it's really hard, especially for semis. But yeah, you can sort of catch them, and then you take out these tariffs, and this industry can become competitive around the globe. But in Russia we have a great example of local car manufacturing. Imports of any car.
The Lada?
Imports, the
Lada.
Lada. Imports of any cars were tariffed all the time. So for us, even though Russia is not the wealthiest per capita, for example, Russians are paying more. Always were paying more money for the same car you guys in America enjoy, which is a little bit crazy. But in the end, it just pushes local producers to have higher margins. Continue producing the same lower quality stuff. There is no direct competition because in lower price range, competition from abroad is not even working with this kind of tariffs, and tariffs are quite substantial. So just imagine a world where tariffs would be all around us. It's crazy to think about it.
That would be Trump's ideal world, right? He said tariff is his favorite word in the dictionary. I think it was after love and victory and all these other points. But my other question, fine. But can you make the argument, fine, everybody loses in a trade war, for example, in a tariff war. But can there be relative victories in the sense that one country will lose less than another country? To me, that's the basic argument, that if America tariffs some of these countries, I'm not saying all of them, I'm not saying that we need to be tariffing everybody, but if some of these tariffs go into effect, can the U.S. not, relatively speaking, do better in that trade conflict? So say with China, for example, can America not sell its goods to other markets and bring back certain jobs, whereas the Chinese can't have the same trade-off? You know what I mean?
It's hard to speculate about that. Generally speaking, it is possible to create an artificial example where this could happen, that basically you are trying not to be wealthier by making the most, but it's kind of a Russian approach to things. You're feeling rich when your neighbors are poor.
Right. Oh yeah.
And this is sort of the same kind of question, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think to Michael's point as well, it's like you will win, but not economically.
Right.
It's like you're trying to utilize your political power. The same thing. I think this is exactly what happened with Colombia, right? They didn't want to take the illegal immigrants, and then Trump said, "Okay, we will tariff the hell out of you." And immediately they said, okay, we will take the immigrants.
Yep.
So this is what I think, this is where you have this win-lose situation, where you are so attractive, so important market for some other countries, for some other markets, that the fact that you are imposing tariffs, it will affect them, not economically, politically.
Right.
But at the end of but at the end of the day, I mean, I might be wrong, but what I remember from macroeconomics 101, at the end of the day, whenever you impose taxes, whenever you impose tariffs, it's not the companies who are paying. It's not like it ends up with the regular citizen of your country who are paying, and it will not help you to develop the businesses. It will help you to increase the prices, and they will pay more.
Sure. Well, that's exactly. It's a trade war, right? It's a type of conflict. I think my basic concept, though, is, for example, I think our biggest export to China is agriculture, is my understanding. So I don't know if you know off the top of your head, but
actually, no idea about that.
Okay.
I'm surprised about that.
Maybe it's not the case. Anyways, we can look it up, but I know it's a major export of the U.S. So
I think it's services.
Services?
U.S. is a services economy.
Yeah.
I think it's 70% of U.S. economy.
Of the entire U.S. economy.
But I'm saying of trade with China, I think our
okay.
biggest export is agriculture. Again, I'm not sure exactly.
I don't know.
So, if they want to raise tariffs on our agriculture, fine. Our agriculture will always find a market. That's not something that there's no value add between, American corn versus European corn versus Chinese corn. But if you're then tariffing Chinese goods where you can get an alternative buyer, my view is that could impact them negatively more than it impacts us. Which, again, to your point, everybody still loses. Mm-hmm. Everybody gets poorer, but we're taking on our greatest geopolitical adversary at the same time.
Which is a great breathing ground for another power.
War.
Another
power. Sure.
Yes. Let's say India. while there is a war, the best example is Second World War. Yeah, Europe was by far the center of global economy and prosperity. U.S. was growing, but 2 wars in a row, and there is a huge dominance from the U.S.
And the UK and Germany sort of destroyed each other in the process, right? Over two world wars.
And Russia was heavily involved as well.
Yeah, we heard about that. Yeah, you guys essentially won the war, right? You guys did the heavy lifting for us.
Americans saying that USSR won the war. It goes against the Hollywood movies.
Listen, I will disagree with Hollywood. Having studied Russian a long time, as you both know, I was always sort of offended for you guys when you guys had 75% of the casualties, when the Russians at the end of the day did do the heavy lifting in Europe to win that conflict. I'm not saying we didn't win, of course we won, but you guys were the front line. You guys were the ones who sacrificed the most, and yes. I think that's very rarely recognized.
The Allies won. It was not one country. One country couldn't do this, so that's why Allies
But I'm
won.
saying you guys had to suffer the most.
Yeah, that's true.
That's also true. Important to realize that 70% is related to European theater, I think.
Yeah.
There is also Pacific theater.
Oh, yeah, that was only us. Yeah. We did all the lifting in the Pacific.
Zero lifting. The biggest part of Second World War in the Pacific was China versus Japan war.
Right.
Tens of millions of people died. It was, incomparable to the USSR losses, actually.
Okay.
So
you want me to give credit to China as well for helping us?
In
which case, fair enough.
They lost. Eventually, they were conquered.
China lost.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you cannot give them credit like you can give credit to British or US, who definitely helped winning the war globally. You can argue that Soviet Union was the biggest contributor by far in terms of just actual fighting. Even though US and it's quite well-known fact that US helped economically in a huge way. I know cities that are built around the factories, which for which equipment first arrived from US soil.
You're welcome.
From Lend-Lease.
It's you are welcome because it helped to win the war.
We work together to win.
All people who are alive at this moment are really welcome of this effort of our predecessors.
That's true.
Not like only I mean all of them.
Actually, to that topic, I don't understand I understand this notion from propaganda perspective. Like, we won this. No, we won this. Like, we suffered the most. No, we suffered the most. But the important thing is it was exactly the time in history where it was the group of most powerful allies in the world that did the heaviest lifting possible all together. Like, you cannot diminish the Normandy operation. You cannot diminish the value of it. You cannot diminish the value of the Kursk battle or Stalingrad battle. Like, it's impossible. Or Leningrad's blockade. As well as you cannot, the Dunkirk operation. You cannot also diminish that. Or Battle for England. Like, these are the incredible, enormous effort by the Allies. So I don't understand where everybody start playing with this. No, we won the most.
It's a huge effort. There are, a great movie about a team of UK scientists who basically invented computer.
Oh, Imitation Game.
Yeah, the Imitation Game.
That was the
great movie, actually.
Yeah. What did they invent? The
computer.
The code breaking and all that stuff.
They were trying to crack the Enigma, which is like a typewriter-looking machine invented in Nazi Germany. It was intended to basically cipher any kind of message in a very interesting way, which was really hard to decode using just the manual power of people. And these guys, huge team of mathematicians, and they just cracked using a very new idea of.
That's true. Look, everybody contributed. I think we can all, as ancestors of the Allies, agree on one point, though. The French did nothing to help. They were not helpful In World War II. That's the only thing I think we can all agree on.
They were wonderful in retreating.
Yeah,
For
exactly.
sure.
They did a great job going backwards.
You know the
Exactly.
joke that why there is a back-looking mirror on French tanks?
No idea.
Because they have to see
Oh
the
my
enemy.
They have to know where they're going
Yes.
as they retreat. Exactly.
No. Because they have to see the enemy somehow.
Oh, there
Oh
you
my
go.
God.
There you go. Look, they did an excellent job retreating. An excellent job. Great job retreating. Great going backwards. I want to make sure we cover your background. We haven't had a chance to talk about that. Talk to us, Dima, about your background. What is your story? How did you come to Dubai? What are you educated in? Why are you here, pretty much? Talk to us about that.
Yeah. So I am economist by education, economics and finance. So my first degree was back in Moscow. I did a double degree program with London University. So our program was fully in English, which is really helpful in this diverse world. I got to the university by what is called in Russia Olympiad program, which is like a national competition of
National intellectual contest.
Yeah.
And how did you do in that national intellectual?
Yes, I was happily second. And actually, a great story that the first guy was my friend. So
And you were second in what?
it's a national competition in economics.
National.
Yes.
So you were the second best in
yes.
economics in the country of Russia.
In the country of Russia.
Yeah. That's pretty impressive.
It's not
It is.
not as
It
much
is.
as being like a second in mathematics in China, for example, but it's still
Okay, sure.
it's still good enough to continue with a very good education. After my bachelor's, I went for studies in Columbia University.
In my country.
Amazing university, amazing campus in your amazing
country. There you go.
Yes,
That's what I was
yes.
waiting for. Good. Good point. Good point.
I was studying during Obama administration, I
Okay.
believe, who was a great president at the time. By the way, Columbia alumni as well.
We don't need to go into that, but okay.
yeah.
fair
Obama
enough.
was good. Even you admitted this.
Yeah.
You admitted that he's a cool guy.
Cool guy and good president are two different things. Anyways,
You admitted both. I have it on the record in our previous episodes on
Trump
podcast.
is a better president. Anyways,
Look,
let's continue.
it's really easier to
Better than George Bush, I agree.
to troll you guys. So after the studies, I joined a private equity firm. I went back to Russia. I joined private equity firm. We were
Why did you go back to Russia? Was it the women or was it the economic opportunity? What?
so my
a little bit of both.
yes, for sure. The argument that you are talking about is very, very important.
Which one?
Which one?
The ladies.
There you go. Exactly. Okay. Very quick question. Now we got two Russians at the table. Are Russian women the most beautiful women in the world?
My honest answer is one of the most beautiful. Yes.
Very diplomatic answer. What was your answer?
I would say, yeah, Russians, Ukrainians, Polish girls, like Eastern Slavic girls, number one.
Okay. Anyways, very quick aside. Let's get back to the topic.
Yeah. So, private equity fund experience was really helpful in terms of going a little bit away from finance stuff, more to the engineering, management sort of things. Because in my role, I was really lucky to build up a huge industrial project in Russia from just plain ground. It was a huge field, and now there is a quite big company factory.
How much money were you given to build that?
So we had a capex of 120 million.
$120 million.
Yes, and we deployed it within, I believe, around 2 years.
And you managed that process.
I managed a big chunk of it. I was in charge of all international relations, and since it was a project that required a lot of technologies, then it was like more than 50% of capex was just designed to be paid out to foreigners, which is a great example of global trade and how things actually work in the world.
So you managed over $60 million of
Yeah,
that.
yeah, like
How
more
old
like
were you at the
70.
time?
I was 25.
You were a
something like
25-year-old managing $70 million to help build this.
Pretty impressive.
Yeah.
That's insane.
Yeah, then things turned a little bit away from private equity, family office, which is a form of investment fund. So basically, when you have a fund that is managing money of certain individuals, and it is not open for any kind of, you cannot invest with us, it's only for these families, then it's called the family office, and I am basically a money manager, asset manager for this company, for the fund.
And when did that start?
6 years ago.
6 years ago.
Yeah, so quite a lot of experience in asset management. We work with big names, big banks.
And you manage even more money than what you originally managed as part of that initial CapEx, I would imagine.
Yes, we are managing hundreds of millions of dollars.
Oh, that's cool.
Not in the billions yet. We are trying to get there.
You are leading that charge, right?
Yes, I am leading the charge. Look, we have a very long-term strategy. We are trying to be institutional investor, so we are not like Joey on the block that got some money and trying to trade some stocks. It's very from the perspective of outsider may be boring, most of it.
So it's not like Wolf on Wall Street?
Not at all. Not
No?
at all.
Ah.
But there are some very fascinating things that you can do. You can invest in venture. You are on top of things that are happening around the world, because it's kind of your job to understand what the hell is going on.
And you said that like you invest in some private companies
Yep.
and major public companies.
Yeah, my proud investments are SpaceX and OpenAI.
Not bad.
Unfortunately, we couldn't be like the earliest investors, but we are still enjoying the ride a lot, and we have been monitoring these sort of companies from the very early days. But every fund's investment strategy is sort of strict, so you have to comply with a lot of things. In general, we just try to invest in whatever thing is growing or going to create value in future, and the best value is just making our society prosperous in the end.
And a lot of U.S. companies you mentioned.
Yeah.
So still for you, number one market to invest in.
It is. It is officially the best market to invest.
Excellent. Very
Tip
good.
for
Very,
everybody.
very good to hear.
Tip for everybody.
So finally, how did you make it to Dubai? What was
Dubai? It was just sort of coincidence that during 2022 Russian invasion, some famous news. We decided, for the sake of our stability, to move out, and Dubai was on top of the list of the candidates. It's a great location. I think we can discuss about that
That's
quite
a whole
a
nother
lot.
topic.
Yeah, there are some negatives, positives, but in general, it's quite simple transition from a big city like Moscow
Absolutely true.
to move here.
Excellent.
True. I remember we were talking about this, like when all of us were thinking what we're gonna do, like how we're gonna move away from Russia because of the conflict and so on, and we all we were considering various options, what we can do, where we can continue working, and so on.
Yeah.
Dubai came on top for everybody.
Yes.
It's a great
Among our friends group. I mean,
but at the same time, we are lucky that one of our friends already moved here beforehand, so it was like already not unknown ground for us.
and we've been here quite some time.
Yeah, and that yeah, I've been in Dubai first time, I believe, in 2013.
Oh, a long
Yeah,
time ago.
a long time ago. Dubai was always kind of very popular for like a tourist destination for people from Russia.
Yeah.
Also it's a huge air traffic hub.
It's the middle of the world. Yeah.
Yes, which is really helpful for if you live here. It's amazing to travel from Dubai.
Thanks everybody for tuning in to another episode of the Culture Clash podcast. If you like what we do, follow us on TikTok, Instagram, like our videos on YouTube, subscribe, and with that, we'll see you guys soon.